Hi guys, how are you? Sure have missed you. Today we are talking about things that sink and float. So if you don't know what that means, right here is a big bucket of water. Can you tell that there's water in there? And sink means if you put something in the water and it goes all the way to the bottom, that's when something sinks. When it floats, that means it sits on the top of the water. So we're going to use our brains today, and we are going to try to predict, which means we're going to use all of the things we've learned and see if we can guess if the things I show you are going to sink to the bottom of the bucket of the water or float on top of the water. So over here on my board, I have the words sink with an arrow pointing down. That means if the things are going to go to the bottom, or float if they're going to stay on top of the water. And we're going to make a list of what things sink and float. All right. Now I just grabbed some things from my house. And so we're just going to predict what we think might happen. All right. First, I have just a straw, something you would drink out of. What do we think now? Is a straw very heavy? No, not really. It's pretty light. So we're going to guess, we're going to predict. Do you think the straw is going to float, or do you think the straw is going to sink? Let's see. Is it staying on top of the water, or is it going to the bottom? It's floating, isn't it? This side says sink, this side says float. So I'm going to write straw, but I'm also going to kind of draw a picture. So maybe you guys, not very good. Maybe you guys can remember, since maybe you can't read the word straw, we know that the straw floated on the top of the water. Okay, I'm going to take the straw out. And the next thing I have is a baby carrot. All right, not a big, huge carrot, but a baby carrot. Is a baby carrot really heavy? Not really. Is it pretty light? Let's see. What do you think? What do you predict is going to happen? Is the carrot going to sink or float? All right, let's see. What happened to the carrot? It sunk all the way to the bottom. So we have to put the carrot under sink. I don't know if I can draw a carrot, you guys. Okay, it's my carrot. All right, so I'm gonna take the carrot out. All right, what I have next is a rock. It's kind of a small rock. I got this from my yard out in the back. All right, let's predict. Do you think the rock is going to sink, or do you think the rock is going to float? This is probably a pretty easy one. Let's see if you're right. Whoa, that went fast, didn't it? That rock sunk really fast. So we're gonna have to put the rock under sink, and the rock is kind of shaped like that. So there's our rock. I'm gonna leave that in there so I don't get my hand all wet. And next, I have an empty juice bottle. Now this juice bottle is really big, isn't it? Let's predict, but there's nothing in it. It's empty. So let's predict, let's think. It's empty. Do you think it's going to sink, or do you think it's going to float? This is kind of a tricky one. Let's see. What is it doing? It's floating, isn't it? So even though our bottle is really big, it's not very heavy. It's empty, so it floats. So I'm gonna put an empty bottle. And I don't know if I can draw this. Oh. It's best I can do. Okay, so our bottle floats. Next, I have a domino. We had these in our classroom, didn't we? We built with them, we lined them up and knocked them over, we counted them. Remember when we used the dominoes in our classroom? So what do you guys think? Do you think this domino is going to sink or do you think it's going to float? Let's predict. Let's use our brain and see what we think. What did you guess? Good guess. Let's see what happens to the domino. What happened to it? It sunk. This domino sank just like the carrot and the rock. That's an easy one to draw. I can draw a domino. All right. Now I have, what do I have here? An apple. Do you think the apple is going to sink or do you think it's going to float? Good prediction. Let's put it in the water and find out. Did it sink all the way to the bottom? No, it didn't. It stayed floating on the top. Do you want to know what I predicted? I predicted that the apple was going to sink. I thought that it was so heavy that it was going to sink to the bottom, but I was wrong. An apple floats. Okay, how many things do we have in the sink right now? 1, 2, 3. How many things float right now? 1, 2, 3. So right now they're tied and I have 3 things left. So we're gonna see which one is the winner, all right? All right, next I have a pom-pom. And of course I picked purple because purple's my favorite color. So I picked a pom-pom. Let's predict. What do you guys think? Do you guys think this pom-pom is gonna float to the bottom? Or do you think do you guys think this is gonna sink to the bottom? Or do you think it's gonna float on top? Let me hear it. Good guess, good guess. I have in my brain what I think is gonna happen. Let's see. What did it do? Let's watch. It started out floating, didn't it? And I thought it was gonna sink, but it looks like it stayed floating. So the pom-pom goes in the float. This is my pom-pom. Okay. All right, now I have a tricky one for you. I have 2 different kinds of forks. This fork is the one that I got out of my kitchen drawer, okay, a real fork. And this one is a plastic fork. Maybe you would bring it camping with you, or if you were gonna eat dinner outside, maybe you would use a plastic fork. You can throw a plastic fork away. You can't throw your real fork away. So I have 2 different kinds of forks. So let's use our brain and predict. Do we think maybe they're both gonna float? Do we think they're both going to sink? Do we think maybe one will float and one will sink? What do you predict is going to happen with the real fork and the plastic fork? Could be. Let's try. I'm going to put them both in at the same time. Now, the plastic one's probably going to be a little bit hard to see, but let's try it. Can you tell what happened? Can you see the plastic fork? The plastic fork is up here. It stayed on the top. So the plastic fork is floating. but the real fork sank to the bottom. So here's our list. I hope you guys can read this from here. In which things sank to the bottom? Can you guys read it? The carrot sank to the bottom. The rock sank to the bottom. The domino sank to the bottom. And the real fork sank to the bottom. So how many things did we decide will sink if we put them in water? Let's count them together. 1, 2, 3, 4. So 4 things sink to the bottom. And let's see how many things float in water. We have the straw, the empty bottle, we have the apple, which was kind of a surprise. To me it was anyways. I don't know if it was a surprise to you, but it was a surprise to me. The pom-pom and the plastic fork. So how many things is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So how many things that we chose out of the 2, which one had the most? The sink or the float? Yeah, the float. Because the float had 5 things and the sinking only had 4. So that was our little experiment on sink and float. Now what I want you guys to do is, if you have some time, and you don't have to get a big bucket like this, you can get just a small bucket, or you could do it in the bathtub. But I want you to try and predict some things that you think could sink or float. You can use some toys that you have at home. You could find some other things in your kitchen. You could find things from outside, any kind of things that you want to try. And then before you put it in the water, try and predict and see, what do you think might happen, and then see if you were right. And you know what? Sometimes we're wrong. Like the apple, I was wrong. I thought it was going to sink, but it actually floated, didn't it? So try this at home, then let me know what are some of the things that you were right, and maybe there's some things that you predicted wrong, and that's okay too. All right, well, I miss you guys so much. Thanks for watching my video, and I will be posting a book, a story, a little bit later, okay? Bye, guys.